Hello and welcome to another edition of our Coffee Chat series, where we sit down with thought leaders and industry professionals to have the conversations that matter most to our digital community. My name is Hope Kebu, representing Cafe Innovate Hub, and today's session is going to focus on how unreliable power and poor internet connectivity silently choke the growth of MSMEs in Nigeria. We're also going to talk about creative solutions that can help them stay productive and resilient. And with me today is Nnamdi Ibe, a seasoned IT consultant, software engineer, and an entrepreneur with over 15 years of experience helping businesses leverage technology for sustainable growth. He is also the CEO of Norizine Consults, the founder of Axia Technology and Innovation Hub, as well as the founder of Transport R Mobility Limited, where he combines deep technical expertise with visionary leadership to drive impactful transformations across industries. Hello, Namdi. Welcome to our
Hi,
Coffee Chat
it's my
series.
pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and we're very happy to have you join us today. Okay, so
Pleasure is
just
also mine.
let's start with like the most painful truth in Nigeria. Our business owners have normalized operating under power outages and unstable internet. And it's very inconvenient because some of these businesses have lost hours, they've lost potential good looking sales. Some of them even had situations where they had to cancel meetings with clients, potential partners. Take, for example, a small printing shop that takes their orders online. Their work can be derailed when there is like a loss of internet connection, when NEPA takes the light or doesn't bring it for more than half of, a working day. We all know that these are daily disruptions that can, drain the creativity of our businesses and even drain the volume of their income. And our businesses really need to find very effective alternatives. But before we get to that, can I just ask Namdi, from your work with businesses, how does power and internet directly affect the daily operations and productivity of businesses? And then when there are challenges with these resources, what hidden costs do they create that we may not see immediately?
Thank you so much for that question. It's a very good question, and it's something we deal with almost every day. So, for the businesses we serve, power supply is a major challenge. It seems like we've come to normalize the absence of power supply, and many people have come to accept it as part of their production costs and their operational costs. In other developed parts of the world, you don't categorize internet and power supply as a factor that should affect your production costs. But in Nigeria, in this part of the world, it has become a reality. So most times people who have the financial capacity can look for alternative sources of power supply, like solar, which is capital intensive. And then other people can, especially solar and then generating sets. And then for internet, it seems the only go-to for now in a large part of the country is the satellite internet, that's from Starlink. And we understand that it's affected by weather conditions as well. So those are realities we have to deal with. Those are realities businesses have to deal with. And even when you have the resources and you are able to get the infrastructure as alternatives, those infrastructure are still not the best available. There's still fiber optic network provision that we should be embracing across the country. But for now, those are not available. So for the question, a lot of businesses struggle and they factor it into their production costs. And then it also affects their integrity, because many times there are certain factors that affect your delivery that you don't have power over or control over. And it seems like people are normalizing under delivering because of factors. And when you say, oh, there was no power, it's fine. Everybody accepts it as a way of life. And then if it's internet connectivity, there are certain times when you don't have internet connection and it affects your meetings, it affects your delivery, even when you have all the so-called high-end internet service provision providers as your service providers, there are still times where they get to fail. So it's affecting us in terms of our reputation, it's affecting people in terms of their business reputation, it's affecting people in terms of the cost of production significantly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that very detailed description. I would say that despite all of this, we've seen business owners that have become incredible, resourceful. Like you mentioned, the solar panels, some of these businesses have started getting those alternatives. And some of them have now started working out of hubs, right? And it's also fascinating to see the innovation that has come out of this necessity. So my question right now, Namdi, is over the years, what are, I know you mentioned a few, but what are some of the most creative ways that you've seen some of these businesses adapt to the challenges?
For one, we run an innovation hub, and one of the expressions of our innovation hub is the co-working space. In fact, I'm having the meeting from the co-working space right now, from one of the spaces in the co-working space. And around us here, you have other organizations who are using these spaces. So organizations have realized that they can leverage on organizations like ours who provide workspaces that have constant internet and constant power, and they're able to focus on their daily operations. So people are beginning to leverage on co-working spaces a little more. It's cheaper when you use spaces like this, and then the organization bears the costs of the solar service provision and the internet service provision. So yes, that's been one way. There are also people who are exploring the use of hydroelectricity in smaller scale. So those are not a little bit advanced. Some organizations are beginning to generate power from other alternative sources of power supply. So it's forcing creativity to happen. Unfortunately, power supply is not something we should innovate around. It's something that should be a major component of our production. That shouldn't be a variable. So organizations are doing that. It's now making that organizations are embracing remote work. Organizations are having more flexible work days to also adjust their costs as well. So basically, bracing co-working spaces is one of the major things I've seen a lot of organizations do, except for those who have the power, the capacity to get alternative power supply. So that's one major way I can see for now. So it's also directly affecting the community, because when you have organizations meeting common spaces like this, it's having a positive effect on connectivity, it's having a positive effect on collaboration, because you're getting to across the next office, you can find the business who offers a service you can leverage on. You can find another professional in another space and things like that. Yeah. So yeah, basically, that's it.
Thank you very much. But I also want to ask, I know you mentioned the co-working space and the other one. I don't even want to touch on that because many
Yes.
of our small businesses cannot even afford that at the moment. But can you
Yeah.
say that our small business owners can afford the co-working space, today's co-working space?
Yes and no. Now, let me tell you a bit data. There are certain times of the year where we have a high traffic. Now, and then there are certain events that happen in the country. When there's a power grid failure, for example, we have a high rate of patronage where small businesses come to leverage on what we have as facility. And then once everything gets to stabilize a little bit, it declines. Now, yes, they cannot afford it. I've seen a lot of businesses innovate around battery solutions, power stations, power banks. I've seen organizations that bought power stations for their staff and asked them to work from home. So there's a large adoption of low-cost power solutions across board now. If you notice in Nigeria, a lot of companies are importing those kind of products, alternative power solutions. Yes, so smaller businesses may not be able to adopt. And then even you talk about smaller businesses, not every business has the nature of their business may not allow them operate from a co-working space, because not all of them are corporate in nature. And when you talk about small businesses, are businesses that have to deal with production, those people have to depend on power supply, the national grid power supply. So truly, it's not affordable for the category of businesses we are talking to, and it's not encouraging their innovation at all. Most of the people here, like you said, are actually major organizations who have expressions in this location, and then will gather all their staff together in this area and tell them to work from this co-working space. So the payments doesn't even necessarily come from the expressions here; they come from maybe their head office. So it's not really convenient for small businesses, and we just need to find alternatives. So businesses are evolving, operations are changing, because businesses are constraining themselves to adjust to the power solutions available, instead of businesses innovating already on existing foundations of power supply that is not supposed to be a factor of consideration. So in simple terms, you find businesses adjusting to the lack of power supply and the lack of infrastructure instead of businesses innovating around their core service provision.
Okay, thank you very much. So now this business, because the core of our sessions here about how MSMEs digital, and we
Yes.
have businesses that have gone digital, even small businesses across the country that have gone digital. And I would say that sometimes you cannot help it when they are derailed by these infrastructure gaps. So I was wondering if there are any like offline tools that can help them boost their productivity, but still leave them very much visible online.
So we thank God for we're grateful for social media. Social media has revolutionized the way visibility works. Before now, if you want to be visible, we leverage on news agencies, blogs, major blogs. But now with your social media accounts, you can be visible. I've seen organizations partner with other social media management agencies to handle their social media visibility and while they focus on operations. So there are agencies, I know digital agencies that offer social media services and help small businesses in visibility while the small businesses focus on their production. So there are also tools. Yes, there are tools. A couple of all the productivity tools we have today give you the option for offline usage, accounting tools, operational tools. And then there are those tools that give you the option of syncing later when you have access to the internet. One of the major things I have discovered is most organizations are evolving in their operations. So you have organizations who are doing things like daily stand-ups, maybe at a particular time of the day, they expect every staff to be available online for this particular meeting, and then they assume that you can now work from wherever you are. A couple of them are leveraging on productivity tools that have low demand on internet. The normal productivity tools we know for scheduling, for product management, and all of that. Those ones give you the opportunity to work and deliver later. So it's more of a case of adjusting. So those tools are there. Even the major tools that, so it's not like saying they are specific tools. Most of the major productivity tools are beginning to evolve to encourage and allow for offline work. And then when you come online, it can sync with your colleagues and all of that. Yes.
Okay, so can I dig a little deeper into the names of those specific tools
So
for
most
our
of those tools
audience?
will be a collaboration. Yeah, most of those tools will be will be a combination with operational changes. If you notice, I mentioned daily stand-up. So organizations, in addition to those tools, can adjust their operations to favor employee availability, and especially for employees in areas that are unavailable due to variable power and infrastructure situations. So MS Office, for example, one major tool where you can collaborate to work, gives you the opportunity for offline work where you can sync later. There's also the place where you can for technical fields, for example, if I'm looking at the engineering aspect, there are tools like your regular collaborative tools like Git gives you the opportunity to work, and then upload whenever you have internet connectivity. So it's more about a case, our general tools of work is more about a case of changing our operational approach. How, if instead of expecting people to be online 247, for remote work, for example, there used to be a time where organizations expect you to sit behind your laptop for 24 hours and you're paid by the number of clicks you have on your keyboard. I think that is not working anymore. We need to evolve and change our operational strategies to allow people maybe work and deliver at when they have access to this infrastructure. So all of the tools, for example, I can talk about Slack. Slack, at least you can send messages and it delivers when you're online. Even your productivity tools like Trello, you can also have things like it just doesn't allow for real-time communication. So organizations are basically evolving in how they use these tools rather than the tools giving you options for offline access. I don't know if you get that.
I do. I do. And there are a lot of other offline tools, not offline, but you can,
Yeah.
sync them. Yeah. For example, we have Google, the Google Workspace. I know you mentioned Microsoft, but we also have Google. Google allows you to do some of these activities offline and then saves it to the cloud as soon as you go
Yes.
online. At least your drafts is there, everything is there. You can still work. You don't have to wait until your internet comes back. And I also wanted to mention something around what you said about organizations and businesses that have been able to leverage on other organizations that provide social media services. And sometimes you could say that maybe our small business owners might not be able to afford it. But I wanted to mention that now there are organizations that go as little as 5K
Yeah,
per week
true.
to create content for you. So our viewers, take note. This is something that you need to
Then let me
implement
add
with
to
small
that.
business, especially.
Mm.
I missed that.
Sorry,
What did you
sorry,
say?
sorry. Let me add to that. Let me add to that. So there's something we've learned to do, especially around sustainability, because this question you're asking is centered around more of sustainability for small businesses in the light of the challenges that we have. I think organizations who are categorized as small businesses can look towards the direction of internships a lot. There is a popular saying I've heard before where one of the people I follow, he said something. He said, "Don't put a Boeing engine in a motorcycle," something like that. Meaning, for each stage of your business, understand the capacity your business requires. So I would advise small businesses to leverage on agencies and interns, because social media is available for everybody to use. You can learn digital marketing. You can take courses. You can get interns and leverage on interns. And when they grow to a particular, that's one of the things we did at Axia Hub. We invested a lot into training. We invested a lot into building people that got to build people that now work for us. So we are cutting down the costs of uh, human resource by leveraging on people and building them to match the criteria of people we want to have as work. So for social media, yes, there are a lot of young people who now have those skills and we can leverage on them for visibility. So while it's helping them to grow, it's also helping your organization to grow while you provide them some basic metrics and basic principles to ensure that they keep to standards.
Okay, that's very interesting to hear. I hope our viewers are taking note. Looking ahead, we're seeing that these challenges have also presented opportunities for innovation. We've touched on that here. And there are now
Yeah.
new business models. There's now opportunity for policy change. And we
Yes.
also know that it
So policy
requires
change or
collaboration.
quality change.
Yes, policy.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So we
Okay.
also know that it requires collaboration coming from the private sector, innovators, and especially the government. So, from your perspective, Nnamdi, what do you think that we need to do at the ecosystem level, at the policy level, to make sure that there is stable power, there is stable connectivity that is accessible for even the small business owners?
So one of the things you see when you talk about policy, you cannot do policy without government, and it's a slow journey. I've been involved in a lot of policy design and policy review and policy localization where I am, and I understand how those processes work. And one of the things I think governments owe its citizens is infrastructure. We need to provide infrastructure from that level, from that skill. And then for policy, given that we have limitations in infrastructure, I would advise that policies should be created that will mitigate the weight of the cost of production caused by the absence of this infrastructure. There can be things like tax breaks. There can be things like duties, reduction of duties. There can be things like free trade zones. And then we can encourage these people to, since we depend majorly on the national grid, the government can set up locations where they can provide alternatives because the government has the resources at scale, at larger scale. They can provide resources where they can encourage innovators to be in a particular location where they provide this basic infrastructure while we continue to hope for a day we fix our major problems. So yes, policy is
Yes.
very important. Policy, especially around taxation, multiple taxation is one. I'm looking forward to January when the new tax policies will kick in and then how it would affect us. We are talking about tax breaks. We are talking about incentives for small businesses, and I'm looking at how that will play out for businesses. I'm hoping that it favors businesses who are at a stage of their development that may not have the capacity to bear so much burden of tax as well. So policy in that direction, yes. We also need policies that encourage visibility, visibility beyond social media now, but visibility to markets, visibility to global markets. I know the Ministry for Digital Economy, or is it Digital Bridge Institute, is one of those bodies. Okay, Digital Bridge Institute had collaborated with a certain organization to set up an outsourcing center here in different parts of the country. Now, those kind of things are government-facing initiatives that governments do to ensure that businesses have a face outside and businesses can access affordable infrastructure. Like for those kind of facilities, for example, they give you internet, they give you power supply, and you're able to access very affordable customer service staff, things like that. So those kind of policies that increase our visibility, policies that reduce the cost of production, policies that reduce taxation, policies that even as little as payments. There are CBN policies that affect small businesses a lot more than, sorry to say, insecurity. Is that bad? There are CBN policies that affect small businesses a lot more than infrastructural gaps. When you cannot pay for a service, you've worked, you've run your business to a point and you cannot pay for certain services outside the country because you don't have a viable payment option. It's a problem. There are little things like government policies that affect the exchange rates. Once the exchange rate drops, automatically the price of everything drops. So there are economic policies that the government that may not necessarily look like they have direct consequence on businesses, but they have far-reaching consequences that are not just visible on the front. Financial policies that would drop down our exchange rate, financial policies that would ensure that our payment. I was in an East African country lately and I discovered that none of my cards could work. And that's terrible. None of my cards could work. I had to leverage on other alternatives to get finances to just be there. There's already a barrier. Policies that will encourage collaboration, cross-border collaboration. So policy is very vast and it's something I think that governments can look into. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that very detailed perspective. Yes, but I really hope that the relevant stakeholders can play a role for. So, we are at the last leg of our session today, and I know that there are a business or two that are looking for advice on what to do about this infrastructure gap, the power, the internet connectivity gap that we're facing in the country. So if you could share one piece of advice to any business owner that is on the verge of giving up due to these gaps, what would that advice be?
I believe strongly that the most successful businesses are the businesses that outlive their problems. When you're in a business, and from my observation and my experience with this thing, when you're running a business, many times when you just stay operating, there are certain times when we try to scale beyond our capacity at a particular time. You find businesses who start in their first 6 months, they are looking for how to raise money that they don't need. That's one. Secondly, they are looking for how to employ human resources that they don't need. So if I would advise anybody, let the markets drive your expansion. So a lot of businesses take on a lot of pressure that they don't necessarily need. So if I'm serving a state, there's a particular amount of human resource I need. When I begin to serve a country, there's a particular amount of human resource and infrastructural needs I have. So just to round up, like you said, I think a lot of businesses should grow incrementally and progressively, and probably there needs to be a lot of training. You see, the part of incubation is very important. Incubation gives businesses the opportunity to be able to be guided on how to be operational, to operate within safe boundaries, where you understand that you don't, for example, if you're running a 5-man organization, you don't need a mechano generator, for example. So in solving our problems, we should be able to be properly oriented on how to grow incrementally, because we have real problems. Infrastructure is a real problem. So someone said that a small business, most Nigerian businesses spend more than 50% of their time scaling their infrastructural challenges, their systemic challenges, and then the remaining 50% focused on their businesses. So I think there needs to be a lot of training. There needs to be a lot of training. There needs to be a lot of maybe we should see a lot more startups who are going into renewable energy, because the more players we have in the renewable energy sector, the better the cost will be and the more innovative solutions we'll continue to have. I think we should also look at a lot of more partnerships, partnerships across businesses that serve the same need areas. I think then back to government. The government should be able to ensure that the policies they put in place allow more players to come into the telecommunication sector. Because the more players you have, the more competitive the system is, the more accessible we are to cheaper alternatives for internet connectivity, power solutions, and all. And then we should also hope that we have better access to things like grants, because there are certain skills your business ideas might be there and structure might be there. Grants are important. A lot of businesses running today started on the Tony Elumelu Foundation grants, for example. And because of that, he was visionary. I think the government should also leverage on that. UWIN is something else so grants, basically, access to funding and financing is something that we can benefit a lot from. Yeah.
I think that the government, I don't know how to put it, but I mean, there are some grants that we've seen, even though they are so small, and sometimes you can't even find any of the businesses that have been awarded these grants.
Yeah.
Anyway, the government needs to step up their game when it comes to grants, supporting businesses with grants. So thank you very much, Nnamdi, for
It's
coming
my
on the session
pleasure.
today. And the insights that you shared are very, very informative. And we hope to have you again soon.
It will be my pleasure.
All right. So to everybody watching, if you're a small business owner that is facing these challenges that we discussed today, remember that you do not really have to wait for the perfect system. Start where you are, build, one tool, one collaboration at a time. And so we've come to the end of this session. Thank you again, Nnamdi, for the insightful nuggets that you shared
Thank you.
today.
Hope.
And thank you to everyone for watching. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and join in on the conversation, because together we can keep building a digital future that works for everyone, lights or no lights. Bye.